Hi, you're listening to Martin, and welcome to another video in which I'm looking at getting started with OpenInsight 10. This lesson is going to be largely theory, so if you want to skip it, feel free. A lot of the techniques that I'm going to discuss today we will cover through the course of the videos, most of them, not necessarily all of them. So my advice would be just to sit through. It's going to be pretty quick video, but I just want to cover off this because it is important to know how to find your entities. Now, before I do that, one question: are you keeping up with me, and are you getting ahead of me? And hopefully you're getting ahead of me. Now, in the last lesson we were adding some code to our button, and we explored putting a debug statement in the code which produced a debugger. Did you remember to remove that debug statement before you close down at the end of the day? If you didn't, you need to remove that. You need to recompile that code and save and close it. Otherwise, whenever you run the form and you click on the button that we were working on, your system is going to drop to the debugger, which is ugly, and you really don't want that happening. And take this as a lesson to think about your use of debug statements. If you put a debug statement in and you resolve the issue and you can take the debug statement out straight away, then great, do that. If you are working on something and you need the debug statement in there, or one or more debug statements in there, and you're working on the code over a period of days, have something in your workflow so that you can catch those debug statements. So maybe you record them and you then go back and periodically remove them. Maybe you've got a program that trawls through all of your programs and removes them, but have some sort of workflow in place so that you can remove your debug statements before you give access to your system to users, because it's a real sort of, I think of it almost as a schoolboy error to leave debug statements into a system that you are sending on, unless of course you want your users to drop to the debug, in which case record it, put it in the workflow, and make sure that once you finish that exercise with the user that you take the debug statement out. Anyway, let's get back into the lesson today. So we've been working on our MDI frame here, and from time to time we're going to need to come back to this window. We're going to need to add code when we produce a report. We're going to want to add buttons and quick events and codes to these buttons when we talk about using QBF. We're going to want to add buttons to launch our windows, and we can't really do that sensibly until we've created those windows. So this is a form that we're going to come back constantly. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to use an entity that we created quite some time ago. So if we come back to the Start tab, the entity I'm talking about is the MP patients table that we created right back at the start. Now, if you are running the eval and you've been following through, you may well even find that that doesn't appear on your recent items list. And it might not appear because in the settings for the IDE, you will find a maximum MRU items number. And mine I changed to 30. Yours may well be the default 20. Now I could actually add a few more in here. I've got a little bit more space, so I'm actually going to up this to 32 because it makes sense to have more than enough recently used items in here than not enough, because you can see how quickly the patients table has dropped down this list, in particular when we start adding in graphics. Now in the next lesson we're going to add another table and a form and at least one more graphic, so that's going to push me down 3 more places, with 2 more and I'm off the bottom anyway. So this is a great area for finding your entities that you have worked on very recently. Now if your entity doesn't appear in that list, of course you can go up to the open dialog here and you can work through to whichever entity type you want. You can click on the entity type and come across and find the entity. You can also, off the file menu on open, you could go straight to the forms. So that's a slightly quicker way of getting into your forms. And there's only a few options there. So you've got forms, records, store procedures. If you want to get to the table, so remember we want to get to our patient table, you're going to have to go to Entity. You're then going to need to find Open Insight tables in the list. And now we've actually got a long list because we've got some system tables that are showing and no ability to filter those out on this particular screen. And if you weren't using my naming convention, your table could be anywhere. If you've got a table called System User, for instance, well, it's going to be down here somewhere. So we've got one called sysrepos. Now you can at the top start to type and it will automatically jump through the list. So now I'm at sysapps. If I go sysr, then it's going to jump me to my sysrepos. If I want to go to my MP entities, then I can do the same. So it's fairly quick and easy to jump around and find entities. But if you've got an entity that you want to use more frequently, well, let's open up MDI main again. And if we right mouse click on the tab at the top, you can see add to favorites. So let's do that. Okay, did it do anything? It hasn't actually said that it's added to favorites or anything. And I can't see my favorites on here. And that's because we need to turn on or go to View, Tool Panels, and go to Quick Launch. Now the Quick Launch tab will appear in the left hand panel here, and it defaults to the favorite straight off. And now you can see that I've got my MDI main form. So if we close down that form, yes, I'm going to save the changes. Now when we're working, we can either go to the favorites, we can go to our MRU list, which is the same as the one that's on the start menu. We can go to the updated and we can see all of the entities that were worked on in different dates. And remember, this is going to grow, so things that are older will be further down. We've also got an option for evaluate, so if something's set to be evaluated, and that would appear there. But the key thing for us here is we've now got our form in favorites, and we can just simply double click on that entity there and it will appear and open for us. So what I would say is think about the favorites that you want to show and add those into that quick launch window. Now you can remove them by right mouse clicking and clicking remove, and you can remove all if you want, and you can also open it here if you wish. So don't worry about dropping entities in here and finding you've got too many. So in other words, there's one that you were working on 6 months ago and you're never going to work on it again. But if you've got something like us, where we're going to come back to this form through the life of building this application, then the favorites is a really good idea. It wouldn't be such a good idea to put the patient table in there because, well, I think we're pretty much done with that. However, you might want to bring your tables in if you're going to be adding new dictionary items as you go along. So for now, just drop the MDI main one in there. Anyway, that's this video, nice and short, and I'll see you again on the next one very soon. Take care. Bye bye.